Good morning and welcome back. So, I promised a video on rebuilding windows, and this is the last one I have to do. I had to rebuild 5. 3 of the 5, I had to replace the window cranks. The other 2 were okay. The crank was okay. I had to rebuild the window. As far as the seals, there's an inner seal and an outer seal. So I've really struggled with this. To be honest, this has been a real pain in the ass. This is the last one I had to do, and I kind of waited until I got a little better at it to video it. There's people that have videos on rebuilding these windows that are way better at it than I am, and you can learn way more from them than me, but I'll do what I can do here because I promised I would. So this is the last one. I'll show you here. That's pretty much what all of them looked like. Seals practically falling out of them. So that's the first thing, is just get the old seals off and out and start taking it apart. So I'll show you how you do that. Alright, so this is the gasket or seal that seals both against the siding, and when the sash closes against it. So there's one down each side and one across the bottom, and I guess the bottom one I already took off at some point, but anyway, I got to pull those off. Alright, now sometimes I saw a couple videos where guys were able to just put this glass seal in by using a little soapy water and pushing it right in around the glass, and that's great when you can do it, but that and that are hard, I don't know, putty ecky pucky of some kind that somebody put in there at some point when the window was leaking, and they didn't replace the seals. They just gobbed stuff, and it's hard and in there, and we got to get that out of there and clean that up to be able to put the seals in, which means I got to take the whole window apart to get the glass out to be able to do that. So like it or not, we got to take the whole window apart, and this crank's good actually, and that's the first thing. The only way to get that window apart is take the crank assembly off and the screen out, and to be able to get to the screws that you take it apart with. So I'll do that and be back. Alright, with the crank out, there's just 2 screws that hold that crank in place here, and then you gotta pull the arm up here to the open area and pull that out. So with it out of the way and the screen off, now there is right here a little tab that's normally bent down. That one's been bent up already, like that, so that you can slide the sash out of the track. That's the hinge that holds them together. I'll pull it apart and be back. And that just slides out like that. Alright, now with the 2 halves separated, the part that has the glass in it has these 4 aluminum strips these screws, you pull these screws out, and then that lifts off, which allows you to get the glass out. Oh, you got to take 2 screws out of here too for this center divider or track that the crank rides in. So I got to get about 8 or well about 12 screws out, and we can take the glass out. Alright, so all the screws are out. Now that lifts out, that lifts off, this lifts off, that one and that one. Okay, so now you can lift the glass out of there, and hopefully I can get the glass loose from that Aki Pucky and not break the glass or anything and get it out of there. So I'm going to use both hands and get that out, and I'll be back. Alright, that went well. Glass came out okay. So now I'm just going to use SOS pads and 1000 grit sandpaper to wet sand and whatever else it takes to get all that aluminum cleaned up and looking a little bit better. I've got that half and this half over here where the screen goes and the crank goes. Clean up both halves, and after I get them all cleaned up, then we'll put new seals in and put it all back together again. So I'm going to go clean it up, and then I'll be back. Alright, that looks a little better. Anything that's left we're going to call patina. She's 54 years old. She's earned the right to keep a little patina on her windows. We don't want it looking like a new reproduction. Well, that's what I'm going to say anyway. So I got to still do the other half. Be back. Alright, I'm calling that good enough. Now, first thing we got to do is put the glass seal in. Oh, I got to clean the glass up yet too. It's pretty ugly. So I'll clean that up and then we'll put the seal in for it. Alright, now we're going to put the window seal in. So, start with the window side up. We're going to start on the top in the center. And you'll see why here in just a second. Okay, so make sure, this is critical, make sure your gaskets are good and completely out into the radius of those corners. Then, the why of starting at the top center is because you're going to have a seam. You don't want that seam at the bottom where water's going to run. Now we're going to cut this off about 1/8 of an inch oversized. And when I force the ends together, that'll push everything out and into those corners good and allow for a little bit of shrinkage. When your gaskets go bad, as these were, it shrinks away from these corners, cuts across this radius, and then you don't have any seal on your glass at all. So, I got to cut that off and I'll be back here and show you. Okay, now you see how that's a little long? If I can do this with one hand. So when you compress that, that gives you a nice tight seam there. And it shouldn't leak. Okay, now we flip it over and I'll show you what I do next. Alright, so on the first couple I did, I had an awful time keeping the gasket in place till I got the glass down and everything fastened to get a good seal. So, what I started doing, you can see there, and there, and there, I used a heat gun to glue that seal into place. But you don't want a bump of hot glue that'll hold your glass away from the seal. So right away you take a wet finger so you don't burn yourself. It has to be a wet finger. Make sure it's wet. Wet it however you want to wet it and mash that down, and that makes a nice flat spot, so the glass will lay down in there against the seal good. So I'm going to finish that, then I'll be back. Alright, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but the glass is now laying in there. So now we got to put all those strips back on to hold the glass in place. See you in a minute. Alright, one important thing, as you put the screws in for these side rails, make sure your holes are lined up here for that centerpiece that goes in there. And to help with that, don't tighten these down all the way yet. Alright, so I mentioned I struggled with some of these windows. One of the things that happened doing one of the other windows is when I put the screws into this center piece here in the end, I cracked the glass. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I had to go get a new piece of glass for it. So I'm about to put the screws in here. Deep breath. Oops. So I make mistakes so you don't have to. I put one screw in and then I realized this needs to be up there. So I took the screw back out. So we got to flip this around. Okay, the screws are in and the glass is still intact. Oh, that's so nice. Okay, so remember, I flipped this window now, but the opening where your the arm for the crank, that has to go to the top of the window. So that's where it's at. Alright, so this side's done. Now we got to work on the other part of the window. Alright, so now we got to put the gaskets on the side rails across the bottom, and that's all, nothing on the top. They do make a gasket that's they call it the hinge gasket, but I just use butyl tape there. So anyway, I'll show you here. You got to miter these corners, so I'll show you here in a second. Alright, so that's what the gasket looks like, and we'll call this the bulb, so to speak. That hollow part, that tube, that goes so that the movable sash closes against it. So the flat side is against the siding of the camper. Alright, so that's on there. And now we got to miter this corner. 45 it. I'll be back. Like that. Alright, then you miter the other one to go against it. And we got to do the same thing down here on that end. Alright, now the gasket's on there. So next, we put new screen on it. Alright, so make sure you cut your screen plenty big. We're going to trim that off later. So that's cut and laid on there. Now, I got to go get the spline tool. I'll be right back. Alright, that's the spline tool. That's how you put the spline into the groove that holds. That's the spline. And I bought new spline. I could only get black, but this spline that came out of this one's in pretty good shape, so I'm just going to reuse it. So you start on one corner as opposed to the seal starting in the middle. Obviously this doesn't seal anything, and it's easier to keep it stretched tight if you complete one whole side first and then do the other. So I'll start getting this in and show you in a minute. Alright, I'm going to take back what I just said. What I said was what I have always done. But then when I laid the spline on here, I see where the corners, where the kinks are for the corners, they actually started in the middle. I don't know why I don't do that, but I'm going to do it this time just so I use the spline in the configuration it was in. So that's how we'll do it, I guess. Be back here in a minute. Alright, so we got it started. You just, where are we at there? You just roll the tool along that spline. It's got a groove here in the edge of the wheel that rides on that spline, and it pushes it back into that groove. So keep the screen stretched tight as you go, which isn't easy when you start in the middle, but that's the way it is. And I mentioned cut your screen plenty big enough, and that gives you something to kind of get a hold of to pull on it to keep it stretched tight as you go. So I got just that end and half the bottom to do yet. I'll be back. Alright, there it is, and the spline met end to end right there just perfect, so that worked out. So I mentioned that we'd trim the screen later, and it's later. So now I just take a utility knife and cut the screen right along the outside edge of that spline. So I'll cut that off and be back. Okay, she's nice and tight. That's good. All right. Now we have to cut the screen where this slot is, where the crank arm goes through the screen. And then the crank will sit tight against this and hold the edges of the screen where you cut it, and the hole isn't visible or open at all. Okay, there it is, all put back together again, ready to put into the camper. And I gotta say, that one went better than any of the other ones, which should tell you, you know, if you struggle a little bit in the beginning, first couple, stay with it. They get easier after you've done a couple. I never did this before, and so now I know a lot of things I didn't know before, and it worked out. So let's get this thing back in the camper. Alright, couple of things. I decided to put some hot glue on this gasket on this window. I have it on the other ones, and you know, I had to keep fighting it to keep it on till I got all the screws in. So I'm going to fight this one. And the second thing is, this gasket against the siding should be enough. But after having just rebuilt a camper that leaked, I'm not taking any chances. I'm going to put one layer of butyl tape on top of that gasket. That's what I've done with all the windows, and it seems to work out pretty good. And then butyl tape, I think I put 2 layers of butyl tape across the top because there's no gasket there. So I'll be back here, we'll get this thing out. Okay, so I'm using all number 8 1/2 inch stainless steel screws. That's what's across the top, and then I got to put them in the sides here. You see that hole? And this is where I was saying, it's like when you pull that out to put the screw in, I had a heck of a time keeping the back of that gasket under the screw, and I think the hot glue I put on there is going to help on this window. So we'll get some screws in there and I'll be back. Alright, tonight